Crosser.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I'm enormously proud to rise on behalf of New Zealand First to take my first call in my colleague Tracy Martin's bill, which I know has been a source of great passion for her, as well as reflecting the great knowledge that she has of the subject. Mr Chair, I don't intend to take up too much of the House's time. I do wish to, as I say, give some acknowledgement to Tracy Martin for having this bill drawn from the ballot, and also for the enormously productive cross-party work that she has done, both in the Select Committee and through other auspices, to gain the government's approval, to get them on side, to persuade who are essentially some very decent members on the government side that this is a necessary bill, and this is a bill which will help a sector of the community that otherwise would not have got help. And I think it does reflect the fact that even in a combative, adversarial Westminster-style parliamentary democracy, there are still avenues by which we as good people can work together for a common goal. I want to acknowledge also other opposition members who've spoken, and as well as government members such as Mr Naro, Jacinda Ardern for bringing what's a very forthright and valuable SOP to this bill, and also to Jan Logie. And I want to speak about Jan's SOP, Jan Logie's SOP a little bit further in a moment. Mr Chair, I had a brief conversation with Tracy Martin this morning when we talked about the upcoming committee stage for her bill. And she said to me, what's an orphan? And my understanding of an orphan was that it was a child who had lost both their parents to death, was my perception. She said, well, yes, you're right, but there is much more to it than that. A child in New Zealand is legally declared an orphan if they don't have parents for a number of other reasons, which I had not previously been aware of. If, for example, both the child's parents are in jail, or if they are both unable to carry out the activities of parenting because they are drug addicts or alcoholics or otherwise incapable of providing care, then those children are declared to be orphans. And there are, as this bill addresses, there are a number of gaps in legislation and in our social care arrangements which need to be filled so that children who fall into these categories and the people who care for them are able to access the sort of support and the kinds of allowances that are available to children who, for whatever reason, don't fill those particular pigeonholes. So, without wanting to go into too much more detail on that, Mr Chair, because I know it's been addressed by other speakers, and I realise that there are other speakers who wish to make calls on this bill. Mr Chair, I want to predominantly talk about Jan Logie's supplementary order paper number 70, which calls for bringing forward the commencement date of this bill, bring it forward from 1st of July 2018 to 3 months after the date on which it receives the royal assent. Mr Chair, as I understand it, and again I say that I am very appreciative of the fact that the government has agreed to support this bill, but in pushing the start date out to 2018, what we are doing essentially as a nation, as a parliament, as a government, in order to save a comparatively very small amount of money, is putting what's a small amount of money for a government and for a nation onto the shoulders of a small number of people who are in the worst possible position to be able to afford to pay it. And Mr Chair, I don't want to be provocative, but I do wish to make a comparison between the amount of additional funding from government which bringing the start date forward will cost, and compare that with some other, or one particular other item of discretionary government spending which is going to go ahead. We know from the breakdown and from the figures that Tracy Martin has given us in support of this bill that the additional cost to the taxpayer of rolling it out will be around about $16 million a year in total. So what I would like to say, Mr Chair, is that what we are about to do as a nation is spend $26 million on changing the flag. It's just to put this thing into perspective, Mr Chair. Many people would contend, and I would agree, that no one has called for a referendum on the flag. No one actually wants a change in the flag if the political polls are to be believed. And yet here we are about to spend nearly 2 years' worth of what it would cost to bring the start date of this bill forward from July 2018 to 3 months after it receives the royal assent. And that, Mr Chair, I think, if we as an intelligent, caring nation, if we as a parliament who have shown that we can work across party boundaries, if we can look at those two things not in isolation but alongside each other, and say, Mr Chair.
Mr Prosser.
Thank you, Mr Chair. And say, here we have a bill which will cost about $16 million, or a referendum that will cost $26 million. One of them is for a change in the flag that no one wants and a referendum that no one called for. The other one is a very tangible assisting support payment to some very vulnerable kids and some very stretched caregivers who look after them. And I think I would really like the government to take that on board, to look at those two things side by side, have a deep think about which is more valuable, and put their money where their mouths are, and support Jan Logi's SOP number 70 as we're going to. Thank you.
Jenny Salesa.